I am super excited to be with you all today. Again, this time we're talking about leading from where you are, but I think a better title even is leading from who you are. Leading from who you are. I'll get into that much more in a moment, but for those of you who don't know me, my name is Jessica Denise Dixon. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I am a Black woman who is descended from the enslaved on both sides of my family. I am an Enneagram 8, which we'll talk about a little bit today. I run my own coaching and consulting business where we look at life through the intersections of anti-racism, the Enneagram, and embodiment for really personal and collective liberation. So that's what I do full time, and I love being able to partner with Rise to consult with amazing teams like this. Like Kristen said earlier, it's my second year, and I have such a love for this group. So I'm very, very happy to be here. And for those of you who don't know, I love to start with a presence practice. So that could be anything, right? Our presence practice is just practicing being in the here, in the now. So it's being with everything that has brought us into this space and knowing that we might focus on what's happening next or the future, or we might be focused on something in the past, but it's bringing us to right here. So we're just going to take a few minutes breathing. And so feel free to close your eyes. You can soften your eye gaze. You can keep your eyes open. You can move. Do the thing that makes the most sense to you in this moment. But start to breathe in. You can breathe in through your nose or through your mouth. And as you're breathing, just noticing the texture of the air, the temperature of the air. Does it feel dry? Does it feel thick? Does it feel moist? Is it cold? Is it warm? What is your experience? Just of taking in a breath. Where does the breath go? Does it go to your chest? Does it go deeper into your belly? And just noticing your breath. Your thoughts may come and go. They may dart. They may, ping pong. And that's okay. Every time our thoughts take us out of the moment, we can always come back to the breath. That is the delight of the breath. That always brings us back right here. So intentionally breathing more deeply into the belly, letting the belly expand. How often are we told shoulders back, suck in? No. Breathing in, letting the belly expand. Being with the fullness of who you are. There's no part of you that you need to get rid of or that's too much. Exhaling through the mouth. Intentionally releasing. Some of you are like me and you just inhale and you hold. You just hold on. I have to make it a practice, not just to breathe in, but to let go. What do you need to give yourself permission to let go of? And what do you need to give yourself permission to receive through the inhale? As you're taking these breaths, you may notice something about your body. Notice like I feel a little bit phlegmy. These cold nights, I've still been sleeping with my windows open. It gives me some sniffles in the morning. You may notice sensations in your body. You may notice that you haven't really been related to your body. That's okay. That's okay. There's nothing to do but just to be with what is. To be with what is as well as what is not. And even as we get present in this moment, we get present to ourselves, and that creates more opportunity and more space for us to be present to others. Often our presence with others without presence to ourselves creates a codependency, and that's not what we want. We're going to talk about leading from who we are and self-leadership. And so much of that has to do with us being with ourselves and letting that then shape the quality of attention that we give to others. So we're going to wrap up this time with 3 nice deep breaths in and out. 3 deep breaths. And thank you for your presence. And we have a quick icebreaker question. I would love for you to put it in the chat. The icebreaker question, what is, if your life was to have a theme song, what would it be? If your life was to have a theme song, what would it be? Mine would be Power from the Black is King extended Lion King album that Beyonce put out. I love it. Go ahead and put it in the chat. It could be just a life theme. It could be a seasonal theme. I love a good season, like autumn, like the holiday season. I love Christmas all year round too. Oh my gosh. Yes. The new Taylor Swift album's on your mind. Texas Sun. Oh, I'm definitely going to save some of these and listen to them later. Are you a Swiftie? Is that what Taylor Swift fans are called? The album Spirit of Eden by Talk Talk. Ooh, I've not heard of that. These Are Days, 10,000 Maniacs. Oh, so many things to explore. As you continue, feel free to continue to add songs. I'd love to hear. And I'm just going to start kind of diving in. We're talking about leadership. And Simon Sinek is quoted as saying, a boss has a title, a leader has the people. And I think it's important for us to really look at our relationship to leadership. I may offer a different definition or a different framework of leadership than you've heard, or maybe it's similar to some things that you've heard. But I really think that when we see someone who is a leader simply as someone who has the title, we miss a key aspect of leadership, which is our influence. You know, some definitions do talk about leadership as someone who has a specific position, but definitions of what it means to lead point us to a definition of a leader that includes someone who's a guide, someone who accompanies and shows the way. So this isn't necessarily someone who leads from a title, leads from a position, leads from above or in front. A leader can be someone who is with and shows the way. I believe a healthy leader is someone who leads themselves first, allowing their leadership to then overflow in how they are related to others. They see leadership as something that is mutual. They're not only responsible for bringing others forth. There's a mutuality. Good leaders know that they are impacted by others while also impacting others. And healthy leaders, they empower others to step into their own greatness without seeing it as a threat. So I see leadership not as a role to play or something to perform, but as something that we live. And leadership styles are an interesting thing because often when we're learning what it means to be a leader, we try to craft a leadership style based on what we've seen others do or even what we want to avoid in others. You know, we see that person and we're like, oh, I don't want to be like them. But that person seems to have a lot of success. So let me emulate. Let me copy. Let me take on those qualities. And I think that both of those approaches, I think that they're actually inadequate and inappropriate for who we are. Now, there's a model that I use to talk about leadership, and it's called the Enneagram. As I was preparing for this presentation, there were so many different ways that I was like, we could go anywhere. We could go so many places talking about leadership styles. But the Enneagram I found to be one of the most holistic and comprehensive models for our growth and for understanding ourselves, for both our awareness and our leadership. So some of you know what the Enneagram is. Some of you may remember me mentioning it throughout the years of presentations. So some people come to the Enneagram through like memes on social media or excited family members who are like, you have to know your type, tell me your type. Some people use the Enneagram for leadership development, for emotional intelligence work, for spiritual work. But again, overall, it's the most holistic, both awareness and growth tool that I know. So let's talk about what the Enneagram is. It's a personality typing system with 9 distinct personalities. And these personality types come with their own set of motivations, their own focus of attention, their own values, their own tendencies, and their own strengths and weaknesses. Now, our Enneagram type is a part of our ego structure that tells us what will bring us success, but also things we should avoid. And, you know, the ways of being in the world that would keep us the safest, according to our ego structure. So we can use our Enneagram type or Enneagram work or Enneagram learning to become aware of our habits, to become aware of strengths that we may overuse, as well as what we may miss because we have a specific focus of attention. So in this time, I'm going to go through each type, each personality style, each leadership style. And I want you to think about what sounds most like you, not your ideal. I often find when people take Enneagram tests, which you might be tempted to do after this, which is fine. I often find that we answer from our ideal. We answer from who we think we should be, not actually who we are. And that's a pitfall. It's a pitfall. This system is about our motivation. So if we cling to our ideal instead of what's true, it's going to be harder for us to find like, what is actually my style? And you might feel like you are a combination of a few as well. You do have a core way that you show up in the world, but that doesn't mean you won't find resonance with more than one. Okay. So maybe during this presentation, you notice some things, maybe even after this presentation, you notice some things. What I like to say is take notes, buckle up, and listen for what may be true for you. Oh, so it's totally fine if you've already taken it. Yeah. You don't need to take a test. And if you have and you know your type, that also is really, really great. So I mentioned earlier that I am an Enneagram 8. It took me 2 years to get there. I was mistyped as an Enneagram 2 for a while. And part of my work in finding that I was actually a type 8 was realizing that there was a lot of social conditioning around what a good Christian woman is. And because I was striving to be a good Christian woman, I very much like took on what I thought was the ideal Christian woman, which is a type 2. So it's the journey can take a while for some people. Some people immediately know what their type is. Sometimes, you tests are accurate about 40% of the time, because it's really hard to measure motives and motivations in a binary test. Most of us, we have conversations about how we do things or what we do, excuse me, but why we do something, we rarely talk about that. We rarely do. So we don't necessarily have the skill necessarily to dive into our why in order to answer tests accurately. So when you take a test, I often recommend looking at your top 3 results. Your top 3 results are, have a more likelihood of one of the top being kind of your dominant. So I'm going to give some characteristics of each leadership style, as well as things to pay attention to. And we're going to start with the type 8. This is not because it's my type, though that is a great reason. It is because the type 8 is at the beginning of one of the most important triads within the Enneagram. So that's all you need to know about that for now. Know that we're going to start with the 8, sometimes called the boss or the challenger. Now, the essence of this leadership style is holding space for truth. Holding space for truth to arise and for an embodied empowerment. Type 8 leaders feel truth in their bodies, and they also have a sense when things are off. Type 8 leaders can be comfortable being in control, but need to watch for a devolution into being controlling, which can look like grasping for power or feeling sensitive to feeling like, why are you questioning me? Like, are you trying to take my power? These leaders can set boundaries easily, but need to pay attention to when the boundary is set out of a fear of being controlled or a power struggle, or are they really from a place of mutual empowerment? People often know type 8s are leaders because they feel powerful. They have an energy about them. And that can be wielded in ways to support people or in harmful ways. There's a strong sense of justice with type 8s. So signs of imbalances in power or injustices can be a trigger. For some 8s, all of this energy is focused on injustices outside of them within their communities. Others are leading a revolution, and others are focused on how am I personally impacted by these injustices and guarding up a little bit more. Now, 8s are often big-hearted and can have really some of the softest hearts you'll ever find. But because of the sensitivity to injustice and power, that can lead to a fear of vulnerability and a sensitivity to betrayal, which often means the heart is kind of closed off. So 8s are motivated by power, control, authority, truth, justice, and authenticity. And they're demotivated by injustices, threats to what they're in charge of, other people mistreating people that they see as weaker. On teams, their execution is on point. They take action, they hold others accountable, and they are decisive. What 8s need to pay attention to in their leadership is mistaking transparency, talking about the details or facts of something, for vulnerability. Vulnerability is like sharing how you're impacted, being with how other people are impacted, instead of just focusing on the facts. Other things to watch out for: having too strong of an agenda, take into account feelings, desires, and experiences of others. Your propensity to maybe cut people off, or having this kind of you're dead to me, I'm going to ruin you way of reacting when someone has hurt you, instead of actively reconciling. And then also noticing how your energy goes before you. Are you attuned to what's needed in the space, as well as your impact? Moving on to the type 9, sometimes called the peacemaker or the mediator. The essence of leadership of the 9 is love and peace. Type 9 leaders are amazing at reading the vibe of something, and they feel it in their body, and the vibe that they feel gives them an idea about how to move forward. Type 9 leaders can help move towards solutions while not losing sight of or overstepping the emotional landscape that's present. They need to pay attention though to when they're overlooking their own needs in service to the people that they're leading. That can lead to them actually being a little bit passive aggressive. So nines, they have a sensitivity to, is this person taking my autonomy in some way? Are they taking advantage of me? And that's an important thing that they react to. There's a strong sense with nines about whether something is working or not. These are people who can naturally see the various sides of a situation. They can point out and honor multiple points of view without even needing to take a particular viewpoint, which means that others sometimes are frustrated because they're like, what do you think? Or they think like being understanding or like having that affirmative like understanding means that they agree, which isn't necessarily so. They're motivated by harmony, healthy collaboration, positive environments. Their demotivators are unexpected challenges to the status quo or changes to the status quo, unclear expectations, being overlooked, and high conflict environments. On teams, their strength is seeing the big picture and all the perspectives and helping that guide us towards solutions. What nines need to pay attention to in their leadership is, am I dealing with problems and conflicts, or am I just minimizing them to keep my peace? Also noticing your propensity to withdraw your energy, your emotions, or even physically when you feel like there's too much tension. Again, this can show up like passivity or passive aggression. Disconnecting from your body and feeling like you can't really like think through things, getting muddled kind of in your head. And also like saying yes when you don't mean it. Yeah, that's something to pay attention to. And not letting people assume that you agree or imply that you agree unless you actually do. Enneagram type 1, sometimes called the reformer or perfectionist. The essence of this leadership is integrity and excellence. Type 1 leaders are amazing at seeing what the issues are and being able to lead us into a more perfect future. They have a strong sense of what's right and what's wrong that guides them, and they can be precise in their judgment, which other people don't necessarily always like. Because if you're unaware type 1s end up feeling like they're judging everything. And then people are like, can I show myself to the type 1 without that being judged? But type 1s, they speak up, they're opinionated, and they're unafraid to share what needs to change and what could be better. They're focused on creating a better world and a better self. And type 1s may have a sense of being over responsible for things. Injustices are a big trigger for the type 1 who wants a world that's good, that's just, and that's balanced. They're motivated by doing the right thing the right way, ethics, values, and morals. Their demotivators are unfairness, unethical and immoral leadership, and senseless rule breaking. They're okay with rules being broken if it's kind of like, you know, if it challenges an unjust system often. On teams, they're discerning. They're great problem solvers. They're a moral compass with a high level of integrity. What they need to pay attention to in their leadership is when maybe they're being hypercritical to themselves and others, or maybe they're being too rigid, where they're not creating space, where they may be overburdened when change isn't happening or it isn't happening quickly enough. Also, to distinguish between excellence and perfection. Those are not the same things. Those are not the same things. All right, deep breath. I'm going to take a sip of water. Moving on to the type 2, who's at the start of what is called the heart triad. So we just went from the body triad and we're in the heart triad. The body triad being 3 types that are very much focused on reading viscerally what's happening and then making decisions. The heart triad, sometimes called the image triad, 2s, 3s, and 4s, they're very much focused on getting an emotional read of the room, feeling kind of the energy of the room, and then figuring out what needs to happen. But this is all through the heart center. So the type twos are at the beginning of this, sometimes called the nurturer or the advisor. The essence of their leadership is heart-centered guidance, direction, and connection. Type twos are great mentors and advisors. They're very much tapped into their heart, and they can often get an accurate emotional read of what emotional tending is needed in the moment. These are positive cheerleaders. Twos will coax you on to your dreams. They believe in you kind of just by default. They can be very focused on giving to others while overlooking giving to themselves, while overlooking their own desires, emotions, and needs, which can be a place of tension and imbalance. And sometimes people can feel this, where something feels really off because you're giving all your attention to them and not tending to yourself. They will jump right into action. They will do almost anything for the sake of building and maintaining relationships. So if anything feels off, they're going to go toward it. If anything needs to be filled in, they're going to do it. They're often empathic and very giving. So they're motivated by positive relationships, doing something for someone that meets a need, a positive environment, and connection. Now their demotivators are feeling unneeded, being under or unappreciated for their contributions, negative feedback without anything positive, and a lack of reciprocity. On teams, they will see what needs to happen and they will jump in and they will feel it. They are helpful and they help build morale. They help keep us going. They help say, like, you're doing great. They tend to just be so loving in that way. Now, what type twos need to pay attention to in their leadership is, what boundaries do you need to maintain connection with yourself while you're supporting others? You need to pay attention to, what do I want to create because I want that, because I want to. You know, being attuned to others and not being attuned to yourself comes at a cost. So how can you pay attention to the things that you need as well? And then also how your energy shifts when you feel unappreciated. Sometimes the energy can shift to anger or resentment. Enneagram 3s, sometimes called the achiever or motivator. The essence of their leadership is an orientation toward action and moving toward success. Type 3 leaders love efficiency, and they're focused on doing things the best way possible, as efficiently, as effectively as possible. Now, these leaders love setting high goals and taking actions, you know, to actually achieve them. You know, some people just love setting big goals and don't take the action, but type 3s are going to. They are incredible at reading the emotional energy of a room or a person. And that tells them, what is the best way for me to show up? And what is the best way for me to put my foot forward? When I talk to type 3s, they're often like, everyone doesn't do this. No, everyone is not reading the room or people in the same way. This is one of the gifts of the type 3. So they're also good at helping other people look as good as possible on their way to success. So 3s will often help us bring out the little thing that will improve our chance of success. I have a really close type 3 friend, and which in the past I avoided because often I have been hurt by type 3s. But she's very much like, oh, and if you do this little thing, and I'm like, I wouldn't have even thought about that. But they're always seeing like those little things that's going to add up to a big picture of success. They're about high performance and really like kicking butt. They're just about like kicking butt, taking names, like they're just here for it. They're just in it. They're motivated by goals, by achievement, by getting stuff done, by money sometimes, recognition, and winning. Now, they are demotivated when there are inefficiencies, when there's incompetence, when there's no follow through, and especially when their reputation is at risk, because they're very much focused on being seen in the right way. On teams, they are goal setters and they push the team toward achieving them. They're efficient, they're action oriented. And again, they make sure that we all look good while we're getting stuff done, while we are accomplishing. What they need to pay attention to in their leadership is leaving others behind as you move forward. The type 3 as leaders often move so fast that they're not paying attention to how fast anyone else is moving. So making sure that you actually stay present to the whole group and what's needed. Also, ignoring your own feelings and the feelings of others to be productive. Type 3s can feel like feelings are going to take them away from being efficient, and therefore they kind of would rather not go there, or they'd rather shelf the feelings and come back to it, but that rarely happens. Another thing to be aware of, moving on from failure too fast and not dealing with the grief. Failure is not an identity, it's just an experience. But because the type 3 is so focused on getting to success, failure can also feel like, if they move towards success and then they fail, it can also feel like it's part of them, but it's not. But type 3s just keep moving forward. They keep moving along to avoid the grief. And then also losing contact with the core of who you are. This to present yourself in a certain way or to achieve. Enneagram 4s are sometimes called the individualist, the mystic, the artist. The essence of leadership in the type 4 is creativity, authenticity, and self-expression. Type 4 leaders help pull out what is special in all of us. They have a keen eye for what makes us sparkly and different and beautiful. And that is because that's what they value, being unique, being seen as unique. So they really can see that in each of us. Now, 4s can have a deep fantasy world that can be a place of beauty, but also a place of frustration. Because what can happen is, like, there's this beautiful picture, but that happens in the mind and reality. It's hard to match up reality with the pictures in our minds sometimes. So it's important as a leader to give the vision embodiment through action, not just kind of staying stuck in the vision, but actually taking action. Type 4s have a high capacity for many emotions, and especially the ones that many of us avoid, like grief or sadness. They can be deeply supportive when there's something that's hard to face. They don't turn away from those things within us or within themselves. They tend to have a longing to go deep, and they have an emotional depth that can hold others well. So some types are just going to move on toward the goal, and the type 4 is going to say, no, let's sit and be with what you need in this moment, even if for a moment, even if it slows us down just a little bit. Now, they want an experience to be meaningful for themselves and others. They also seek to understand and be understood, which is a big value for them. They're motivated, again, by authenticity, beauty, and unique original things within themselves and others. They are demotivated by mundane tasks, mundane experiences, being too task-oriented without the connection of being related to one another, without anyone trying to know or understand them. And the last demotivator that I'm going to talk about is just being misunderstood or unappreciated. On teams, they add creativity. They show us what's missing that would actually make a difference in the work that we're doing, and they help others feel emotionally seen. Now, what 4s need to pay attention to in their own leadership is, when am I internalizing shame about differences? Like, I could be a better leader if, rather than celebrating them. Also, when are you over focusing on how different you are, how different your department is, or making yourself seem more unique? That can end up being a trap to fall that 4s fall into. Another is, checking out when something feels mundane, when something doesn't feel like it's deep enough, when something doesn't feel like it's meaningful enough. Can you check you're checking out? And getting disappointment that the fantasy doesn't match reality, instead of being with gratitude for what is and the joy of how that does show up in the real world. Now we're moving on to our last 3 styles. And these are in what is called the head or the thinking, or sometimes even the fear triad. They are focused on seeking security and making sure that they're okay out of a fear of being helpless. They don't want that. So type 5s are the first. And oh, let me take a sip. All right, here we go. Type 5, sometimes called the observer or the investigator. Now, the essence of this leadership is acquiring knowledge and integrating deeper understanding. They are keen observers in their environment. They're all about taking in information and curiosity. They can go down rabbit holes that are sometimes very deep and sometimes forget to actually take action. So it's actually good for the type 5 to come back to the body every now and again. Like, okay, if I find this information that's so deep and so esoteric and beautiful and I love it, but what does that mean in embodied action? 5s can bring objectivity to a situation that feels really overwhelming, which actually helps maybe soothe some of the emotional drama that we can get caught up into when we're at work. They're also excellent analyzers. They can look at different systems and, figure out how they fit together. Like I've been with 5s and they're like, this fits in with this, fits in with this, fits in with this. And I'm just like, wow. So they can see the connections very easily, much more easily than some of the rest of us. They're experts. They help us make sense of the world. They're motivated by knowledge, by data, and by learning. Their demotivators are forced connection, change that has not been analyzed enough, correcting others' mistakes, their knowledge not being acknowledged or respected. Now on teams, they bring critical analysis and objectivity that helps the team form non-attachment to the outcome and boundaries where needed. Things that 5s need to pay attention to. What do you do when you're overwhelmed or you don't feel like you know all that you feel like you should? Actually feeling your feelings instead of just thinking them. Paying attention to when you are relating to yourself as your intellect alone. And just noticing when the information or data rabbit holes that you're down don't actually lead to any action, they just lead to more rabbit holes, which might be fun in personal life. But as you're really developing your leadership, if they're not leading you and the team to action, they can just be, they can be a detriment. Type 6s, I see that we have some 6-5 energy, sometimes called the loyal person, the loyal skeptic, the devil's advocate, or the questioner even. The essence of this leadership is cultivating security and safety, as well as loyalty, as well as problem solving. 6s are the most incredible, thorough contingency planners that you'll find. They think through many worst case scenarios, more than I actually even usually realize exist, but they want to make sure that the right decision is made. They make sure that we're safe in the world by assessing the risks. They point out the holes that we may see in our plan, that they may see in our plans, so that we can fix them. They actually want us to be successful. They want us to be able to move forward confidently. Now, type 6s can get a bad rap for overthinking and for, being like the kind of like a negative person, but it's all out of this sense of love. Type 6s can often feel like they look more like type 2s because they see what they're doing as being really helpful. And I think it's important to understand that everything that the type 6 is doing is helpful. And there's nothing wrong with being a 6, but they're great advocates for fairness. They keep other leaders accountable. They're really tracking. They're tracking what you said. Did you do what you said? Did you do what you said when you said you were going to? They're tracking all of that. They're detail oriented, and there's a sense of completeness that's important with them. Like completeness in that you did what you said when you said, as much as you said, as well as like is everything done fully? Like, are we leaving something out? They're motivated by, again, security, safety, and comfort. They're demotivated by threats to their personal safety. or the what's happening within a project, when their questions or doubts are overlooked or not taken seriously or blown off. Another demotivator is quick decisions with no analysis of plans. Just kind of jumping into something can feel like a threat to the type 6. And then misuses of power. On teams, again, they add contingency plans. They help us plan for the worst case scenario. And they have a deep loyalty to both the people and the process. But they also have a few things to pay attention to. One is not being present to their own greatness, seeing the things that they accomplish as something outside of them, as something that's this person contributed it, so it wasn't fully me. Yes, you matter. Another is the ways you're catastrophizing can sometimes bring more chaos to everyone, including yourself, and the impact on you. Doubting yourself and letting that spiral out of control. Another thing to get present to is dropping into your body and letting yourself lead from your inner wisdom, from your inner sage, your inner wise person. Type 6s often look outside of them for something, but it's already there. It's already within you. And type 7s are last but not least type. They are sometimes called the optimist or the visionary. The essence of this leadership is optimism, positivity, innovation, vision. Type 7s are going to help us look on the bright side of life. They like variety, they like options. They're visionaries that point us toward not just a future, but a positive future. They believe that the sky is the limit. So they push us toward dreaming bigger for ourselves and on a large scale level. They're innovative and down for new things. They kind of just jump in feet first, and they really enjoy new, interesting things. They can also move on very quickly by going to the next best thing. They can frustrate people by having vision after vision after vision. And then no one on the team knows if they're supposed to act on it. So it's like, how many times does, I was just talking to a group, and they have a way of tracking, like if they bring it up 3 times, that's when we know to act on it, because they have a type 7 leader, and they're like, if we act the first time, we're gonna put all of this work, and they might not even remember that they said it. So they tend to be very busy and have very full lives. They're motivated by fun, by options, by experiences and opportunities. And their demotivators are unnecessary limits, constraints, when their dreams are shot down, when they're deemed as unrealistic, boring tasks, being micromanaged, focusing on what's not working. They don't like that. On teams, they bring ideas, vision, excitement, innovation. And what they need to pay attention to in their leadership is bypassing grief or other hard things within themselves and the people that they're leading. When are you overlooking contentment in the moment for future joy? When is your calendar overfilled with things because you might be avoiding something that's tender or sad? And when is your excitement running from something rather than running toward something? Just looking at the chat, there are times when I am the one asking questions or pushing back in a meeting, and I leave the meeting feeling like a burden or the problem child. Yeah, that's a common thing for a type 6 to feel, because when people aren't confident in their own leadership, asking questions can feel like this existential challenge. And so I feel that. So that was the last type. The best part of this leadership model is that we don't have to have a title to understand more about our leadership style or to work on developing more skills. One of the things in, what Kristen mentioned earlier, that our, training is not going to lead us into equity, right? Like trainings are one part of what we do. And we have to actually be able to just like really do the work, really look at ourselves. And each of these types, each of these leadership styles, they're going to come together with other aspects of our life. Like part of the reason that when I was learning about the Enneagram, that I didn't really see myself there, you can't train your way out of inequities. There it is. I saw descriptions of the Enneagram 8, and it seemed like a white leader, kind of like head of a corporation, who was just mowing over everyone and didn't seem to have any kind of care for people. And I knew that wasn't me. I knew that wasn't me at all. But those descriptions that I read were a type 8 mixed with a white male who had privilege, who wasn't really healthy from my perspective. Because, power of a type 8 plus power of within society and privilege, well, they had no real reason to. Because often things like privilege are shields, right? The type 8 who has privilege can wield power, sometimes dangerously. They can even be disliked, but still be seen as an asset. While, my Black woman type 8 self has been seen as a threat because I hold my own power. Men have really thought I was trying to steal their power. It's like, I don't need that. But this is just one way that our identity and our socialization shapes how we express ourselves. So the more privilege one has, the more this awareness practice really matters around these things, because you can really wield the things that I said to pay attention to. You can wield some of those to harm others, not even meaning to. Now, our responsibility as leaders is to first lead ourselves, unless we're performing leadership. Some people are okay showing up, performing leadership, going home, taking off their leader hat and not, whatever. But I think we want our leadership to truly flow out of who we are and our personal growth, our personal learning. So in the context of these styles, what does that mean? Right? It means, without shaming ourselves, to look at how our style may impact those around us, as well as what is the cost to us. Some of the things that I talked about are really, really beautiful and really helpful, but sometimes we can overuse our strengths and not create space for another way of being. So just going through some of these, for type 7, it could be self-leadership. Really could be acknowledging how you push for something innovative and how that might exhaust other people, and how that actually might be a way of bypassing the present or ignoring the grief that people might be experiencing from something not working. It's a choice then to be self-reflective before taking something new to the team. For the type 6, who might feel like you need to analyze things fully, it can mean actively and intentionally looking at what are also the best case scenarios to this situation and bringing those to the team as well. For the type 5, who wants space and time to research, when there's action to take, how can you decide when enough is enough? How can you develop that awareness within yourself that I have the data, I have enough to make the best decision that we can with what we have? How do you know when you're going too far down an information observation rabbit hole? And can you develop the skill to notice that? For the type 4, you have a tendency to get frustrated and feel misunderstood. And if you're not intentional, then you can actually create miscommunications that cause this. So maybe part of your self-leadership is learning to communicate in ways that honor you and help you actually be heard. For the type 3, you're driven by efficiency and effectiveness. What does it look like for you to check in with yourself, to check in with your heart and your feelings and seeing how you are doing and seeing how the people you are with are doing, the people who are part of your team. For the type 2, you can overgive without even being asked and then find yourself frustrated and resentful. So maybe the self-leadership work is to develop a practice of consent, to develop boundaries before you give, so that you can actually check in with yourself. You can check in with them and say what they need, and only give from a place of groundedness. For the type 1 who can find fault easily, maybe your self-leadership is to sit with the judgments you have for yourself and notice when they're coming out with your team unnecessarily or unrealistically. For the type 9 who maybe says yes to avoid conflict with a no to keep the peace, can you make it a regular practice to actually feel into your desires and what you really want and what you really need so you don't get lost in the moment? For type 8s who may move forward without accounting for people's feelings or the impact on people, your self-leadership may be to tune into your own emotions regularly so you don't overstep yours or invalidate others. The more we practice self-leadership, the more our leadership is truly a gift for others. And it becomes an overflow of who we are, not something we do or perform. And often if we're not doing our own self-leadership work, we can develop codependent relationships where we're focusing so much on the other person that we lose ourselves. I see a comment. Yes, I have something to say about this in a second. I'm just going to wrap up with another thought. And this is really that no matter where we are in an organization or in life, we have leadership to offer others. And we can manage up, which means understanding our power, our personal power, and our influence. And our influence in, for people who have maybe more senior positions. We can also manage across, right, which is influencing peers who may be on the same level as you, who may be in different departments. But these are the people who, you want to have an impact. And we can also manage down. We talk about this as like a project manager or even a supervisor. The good news is that all of these are skills. Now, often when people are like promoted to a supervisor, it's not necessarily because they have good supervision skills. It's because they were doing their job well, and the next move up is to management or supervision. So often these people are actually just kind of left to figure out how to do that well, how to do that in a way that doesn't hurt people, or they're really focused on the other things because they know that those other things are where their strengths are, and they let supervision fall to the wayside. That's what I love, remembering that anti-racism, move toward equity it's so skills-based that we don't have to be afraid of it because we can learn. There's so much to learn, and that's a good thing. What I love about the Enneagram is that it tells us there are at least 9 ways of being in the world that are valid. And the more we understand ourselves, the more of a chance we have to say, oh, that's different, but also valid. And I can understand how. So managing up. When we manage up, it's important for us to look and find the connection and values of the people who are above us. What's important to them? What drives their worlds? Now, this may be different than the things that you think they should be focused on. They may be different. The point is not to have this judgment, it's to actually understand them. It's to practice empathy. It's really hard to influence something if you don't get what drives them. It's important to understand what you see their role as. Do you see them as someone who's on your side? Do you see them as an adversary? Do you understand what their expectations of you are, both spoken and unspoken? Many things we learn without them being technically trained, to us. But if we're not paying attention, right, we can be seen. There's all these little things that happen kind of on an informal level that we can miss that make us seem maybe unreliable. And that makes it then harder to actually manage up. Do you know your boss's leadership style? If you tend to be more of a type 2 leader, that's about relationships, and your boss has a type 5 style that's more about analysis and making the right decisions, if you come with overly emotional language, or you focus too much on the connection with them, you actually might be ineffective in influencing them. You might need to focus a little bit more on bringing a complete data set, even though your natural inclination would be to come up with the relational impact of the problem or concern. You can bring those too, but you also want to meet them where they are. And one important thing that it's important for me to say is this is not about manipulation, right? This is not about like, ooh, I got to figure out how I can come and talk to you about this. It's like, no, it's actually just being like, oh, you're a person who has different relational needs, who has different desires, who has different focus of attention, and just honoring that. It's not a matter of like manipulating and doing all this. It's like just knowing people. You know, the root of the word respect is to see, it's to regard. So what are their strengths? What are their weaknesses? What are their blind spots? What are their preferences? When we see people as fully human, then it can really help us develop what we need and that relatedness that we need to really be able to manage up. And when you're managing up, there are some things that I think it's really helpful to communicate. One is clarity, getting clear on both the problem and on the growth edge or opportunity. This means actually getting to the core of what we want to talk about. What is the vision? What is the problem? As well as the impact. Who is impacted by it? What are they impacted by? Why is this important in the now? Or if it's something even future-based, what are the things that you're predicting that might cause an issue later that you're talking about now? Like, can you bring that clarity so that you can present that to the people who matter and they can actually hear you? Another thing is important is, you know, a solution or several options for solutions with the implications of how they may be effective, or even why you believe one solution may be more effective than another. This is about like critical thinking. It's about systems thinking. It's about like being able to really, again, see the impact of things. And this is all skills to build. These are all things to practice. Some people aren't going to be naturally more like better at this. Some things are going to take a lot of practice. And then of course, something that's important is the responsibility that you're taking to make sure that the intended outcome gets done. So what does all this mean, and how, like, what do you as a leader see as your responsibility? Managing up isn't like just presenting problems clearly, right? It's not just like, oh, I told my boss what the problem is and they just didn't do anything. It's also like rallying the team. It's making sure that everyone feels empowered to deal with what the problem is. People feel empowered to take on a new task, that they have time for it, right? Managing across is similar but different. It's important that people actually really do know what's in it for them. They want to know like how they're going to be impacted by something and how it impacts their work. It just is the way that it is, right? Like, it's important for us to understand what we're focused on so that we can also just be with like what other people are focused on. If I'm bringing up something to my colleagues and I'm really trying to get them behind something, but I haven't stepped into their world, I don't care to step into their world, it's going to be harder for me to actually get them to, you know, to rally for something. So we want to practice being connected in a deeper way, right? Instead of like objectifying them or like reducing them as just like the person who can do this thing for me. Sometimes this happens very unintentionally. And so it's just something for us to look out. You know, when we're managing across, what do we need to get into their world? Well, how much do we need to know about what they're working on, about what their day-to-day is, about what's driving them in this season? These connection points can make a world of difference. And, you know, I just kind of want to finish by saying, like, no matter where you are, you matter. So gonna open the space for some Q&A. I'm just gonna read this in the chat real quick because I think it's helpful. I'm a 5 with a 6 wing, but my second highest score was a type 3. I feel like I often have to prove my knowledge to people by doing it and being successful. I tend to analyze and put it into action quickly, but then get told to slow down a lot. Kind of a catch-22, working on balance between the two and being open with people and expressing the thought process. And I want to talk about this because I like to talk about our Enneagram type and how it intersects with our socialization, because it's so important. And often our idea of success, especially, in the USA, is the type 3. When the type 3 and the type 5, they often are common mistypes, because they both kind of take a step back from emotions and want to move forward. But also the ideas of success are that you're the smartest person in the room and that you are as efficient as possible. So being the smartest person in the room, type 5, being as successful as possible, type 3, those are both key aspects of who we're supposed to be successful, right? So, as we're looking at these things, I'm always like, yeah, it's so common for people to kind of feel like both of those. And us being able to kind of dive in and seeing like, what is it? Like, okay, like maybe my dominant type is 5, right? But one of the ways that I cope is this aspect of the type 3, because I know that this aspect is the thing that's going to lead me to success. So anyway, I just wanted to like speak to that, because it's such a big mistype that I see because of our cultural conditioning. Yeah, but haven't taken the test yet, so to kind of wrap up, our opportunity with all of this information is to dive really into a deeper understanding of our leadership style, of our heart, of our soul, and really understand, what do I bring? What do I bring to a space? What do I bring to an organization? How can I lead myself and use that leadership to influence people in my sphere? How can I use my strengths and my leadership to bring more of myself? What are some things that I maybe need to embrace about myself that I've been avoiding, that will help me actually just like be the leader, be the person in the world who I want to be? So I hope that this workshop, along with the others, that you have access to the recording of, I hope that you see them all synergistically as being one conversation about who we are in the world and why we matter. And it's important that you know that you matter, that you know that you are incomparable, that you are here for a reason, and that your organization, this world, is lucky to have you. So that's it for me. Thank you so much.